The other thing is that the war on women doesn't only extend to reproductive rights, contraception, abortion, etc. It also corresponds to pay equity, okay? And Senate Republicans have blocked a pay equity bill, and this is pretty disturbing. The motion needed 60 votes to succeed. It got 52, not a single one from Republicans, and this was a Democratic measure designed to ensure that women don't face pay discrimination, and Republicans blocked this yesterday. And they're complaining that this was politically inspired, and also that it would reward trial lawyers at the expense of employers. So this follows the idea, which we've talked about on the show, including with Susan Saladoff about the movie Hot Coffee, this idea of the frivolous lawsuit. And this kind of, we seem to be forgetting that if a lawsuit is actually frivolous, then a judge throws it out. We already have a very well-established judicial mechanism to make sure that if a lawsuit is frivolous, as it is often discussed, then it gets thrown out.
It should get thrown out.
It should get thrown out. And if we believe in the justice system, which Republicans claim to, then we have to assume in most cases a so-called frivolous lawsuit will be thrown out, don't we?
I guess it's safe to assume.
Okay, so the bill would close loopholes in the 1963 Equal Pay Act. It would have required that employers prove that differences in pay are related to job performance and not gender. It would prevent employers from forbidding employees from discussing salaries with each other. Talk about conservatives who are in favor of freedom, but are okay with employers saying to their employees, you can't talk about your salary with other employees. Sounds like a pretty significant restriction on freedom to me, doesn't it?
I would say it is, yeah. I mean, not to mention just the despicable act of being able to discriminate freely with what you pay.
Sure. So we go back to the numbers, and the numbers that we often see presented are that women earn 77 cents on the dollar compared to men. This reminds me of last year at Netroots Nation in Minneapolis. One of the nights I was at, there was a bar that had kind of like the going away party, and I was there with a couple of the guys from the Young Turks, and we were kind of waiting in line. And you know how crazy things can get at an open bar, Louis.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. And as I lose my earpiece here. And when we were finally almost at the front of the line, after waiting like 20 minutes, a young woman cuts in front of us and orders her drink and then looks back and says, give me a break. I only make 77 cents for every dollar you guys make. So every time I hear that 77 cents number, I think of that. But the Republican argument that's being made to counteract that is that the actual gender wage gap, when you take into consideration that women typically have different jobs than men, is only about 5 cents on the dollar. And this seems so disingenuous to me because part of the problem is that women aren't getting the same roles that men are getting. There are certain positions which men are being given preferential treatment for and being selected for. You can't zero out the fact that men are getting the better jobs than women and say, well, if you consider that men have the better jobs that are supposed to be higher paying, then the pay gap isn't really that different. That's bogus to me.
Right. I mean, it's hard to factor that in because we're just dealing with actual numbers here and actual pay.
It's like saying, listen, it's not really true that people who discover prostate cancer earlier do better than those who discover it later. If you take into account that discovering it later is much more serious, then it's really not that true. Well, yeah, that's the point. That
right.
It's worse to discover it later. It's worse that the women are getting certain jobs and not getting certain jobs that men are getting. You can't discount that. You can't zero that out.
But that is a separate issue.
It's a completely separate issue. Yeah. Okay, let's take a break. We'll be back. We'll talk to Robin Stewart DiMartino. We'll talk about John Hagee saying atheists should leave the country. They are unwanted and nobody would miss them, and a lot more. Stay tuned. Back after this.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.